Now I will discuss about the belect directives in the case of loop. So how we can do that? Let's go to see with an example. So here I am going to the views and creating home.blade.php. Sorry, it will be php, rename php. Okay, so here I am going to work with the loops belect directives. Here I am going to call the home page like this. Okay, so here for using the for loop, for example like this, we have a belect directive that is for. So in the case of for loop, you will have to also use the end for. Okay, like this. So here, like the other for loops, you can simply call something like that: I equal to 0, I less than 10, then I plus plus. Now here I can easily show the information, and that can be anything. For example, my name. Now if I go here and refresh, and you will see that 10 times my name is showing here. So loop is working perfectly. If you want to show the value of I, you can also do that. You know, there is a PHP, or here you can easily use the belect directives like I. So it will show the value of I, and after each I am going to call a beer tag. Okay, so like this. Now if I go here, refresh, you see that 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 9 it is showing. If I change the value of I 1, this is equal to 10, you will see that it will start from 1 and going up to 10. So the for loop is working here perfectly. So similarly, you can do the same thing in the case of while loop. Okay, so here I am going to do something, that is I am going to use the PHP and end PHP, and here I am going to call a user variable. For an example, this is an array users, and here you can use the associative array or you can use the normal array, no problem. I am going to change it, that is students, for example. So in the case of students, for example, I have some students, Arifin, and then another one is Patrick, and another one is Smith. So this is the variable students, and I have some values there. Now I am going to call the for each loop. So this is the for each, and here the end will be end for each. So this is another belect directive, that is at the rate of for each. You see that there is a student list, so I am going to call it here students, then as singular student like this, and into here you can easily show the information. So for example, here the information is student, and then there is a beer tag. Okay, so let's check it. I am going to run this, refresh, you see that Arifin, Patrick, Smith. So total 3 students list are showing here. So in this way, the for each loop will work perfectly here. Another one is for else loop, that is an extra loop that will work for the belect directives in the case of Laravel Blade. So here you see that what is the system here, that is like the for each loop, I will do the same thing, that is students as a student, the same thing here it will work, student, but here is an empty, and in the last there is end for else. Instead of end for each, I call end for else, and here for each, and here is for else. So instead of the term is, I use the else. Only an extra thing here is in the middle you can use an empty tag. For example, the students has no information, so then the empty will work. For example, here if I do the same thing, student, and no student found, right? So like this. Now if I run this, you will see that the similar thing is working. I did not give new line, so it is showing in the one line. So here I can do like this. So the similar result here it will come. You see that like the for is, it is coming the similar result. But if I do not define this, I am going to do one thing, that is I am going to call another loop, that is teachers. But you see that there is no variable assigned by the name teachers, so I want to call the teachers as teacher, and here is teacher, so no teacher found. Now if I run this, here undefined variable teachers, but here I do one thing, that is as it is empty, I am going to call teachers. This is an empty array, okay, but there is no value here. You see that no teacher found is showing here. So if there is no value into a variable, then this @empty will work. But in the case of doing this here, you will have to call another condition in more complex method. You will have to approach here. You will have to call here an if condition, and then into the else condition you will have to call it, and in the bottom you will have to call the end if, like that. But here it already give you a nice bullet directive, that is for else, where they already give you @empty this thing, and @empty means if the teacher's array is empty, then it will not work. Instead it will work what you will write here. So this is very useful for else. After the for else, I am now going to show you some other things into a loop. For example, where I worked with the students, right, this is actually the students. I am going to copy this and paste it here, or in the top I am going to work here, no problem. Just I am going to cut it and paste it here, okay. So this was actually my students array. So here I am going to show you something. For example, I want to use some other things. If the first student, that means if the first one is RFN or something, then something will be happen. In that type of case, we can also use here an if condition into a loop. When the for each loop will be started, then into if condition I am going to write, for example, if the student equal, for example, not the first one. For example, I am going to check something like that. If the student equal to RFN, then I will skip the loop. I will just skip the current iteration and go to the next iteration of the loop, okay. So if student is equal to RFN, what I will do, I will just use the continue. This continue is same as the continue in the PHP. So continue means the next iteration will jump and the student will not be shown here. So now if I refresh, what will be happened? Now after refreshing, you will see that here is Patrick and Smith. I am going to make here a new line, double new line, or here new line, okay. So here I am going to refresh. You see that Patrick and Smith is showing, but RFN is not here, because in the loop I told that if any name that is that comes by the name RFN, I will just skip that. So this is okay. This is another example. In this way you can do that, but instead of continue, you can also break the loop. For example, when the loop will be iterated something like RFN, Patrick, Smith, and I am going to call here more other names. For example, Brent, Gary, then David, then Amanda, etc. Okay. For example, now if I just refresh it, you see that without RFN all names are there. But I tell that if it comes the name Gary, if I get the name Gary, for example here, like if this if condition, I am going to add the another if condition into here, into the same position, that is if the student is equal to Gary, like this, then it will break. That means the loop will be ended, not the current iteration will be ended. It will just break from the loop will be ended. So if I now refresh, you see that, sorry, yes, Patrick, Smith and Brent, no other names are there. That means this one is not showing for the first rule, then this one showing, this one showing, this one showing, but when I get this name, other things will not be iterated, and so I just break from the loop and nothing after that is showing. So I hope you have understood this thing also. And here you see that what I did here, that is continue this total 3 lines. These are normal, like the normal PHP, but I can replace this 3 line by 1 line. There is another method. What is that? That is, instead of if condition, I am going to remove the if condition, end if and if. Here I will call the continue, and the last continue I do not need. This will do the same thing at the rate of continue, and here if I give a parameter, that means if this condition is found, this will work. So it looks more clean code. If I refresh, you will see that the same output is coming. Similar thing I can do for the case of break, and if I call here break, other things I am going to remove. You see that the code is very clean now. When it will be break, when student will be Gary. So here I am going to refresh, you see that the same output is there. So this is another way to use the break and continue. So in this way you can easily work with the loop based directives, and I hope you have understood the video.